Namaste, everybody. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today, I have a very special guest back with us, James Braha. Welcome, James Braha, after such a long time. Welcome back to our channel.
Thank you. Thank you. I was looking at your channel, it'd been so long that I couldn't remember. So I went back to one of the videos and it had, I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 viewers. I thought, wow, that's pretty
Yes,
good.
it's been a while that we've done a video, probably, I don't know, over 8, 9 months or probably a year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So so I have some good news that kind of relates to what we're going to be doing today. For the last 20 or 30 years, students have asked me if I would teach, and I say, well, I teach through my books. And when I do readings, I go over the horoscope in such detail that that's another way that they learn. But recently, I took a break, and I have a friend named Andrew Mason who's very good with computers. And so finally, after such a long time, I'm actually prepared to teach. And I'm teaching, what I'm doing is I'm doing a 12-session class online that will be done in October of this year, 2024. And you'll get a sense of what these classes are going to be like, because in the classes, I'm putting up 3 horoscopes for each house. So the classes won't be for complete beginners. They have to know what a house is. They have to know what planets are. They have to know what aspects are, but that's about it. So we take the first house, and I find horoscopes with a really great first house, a terrible first house, and then a first house that's maybe confusing or something like that. But I also go over the charts as a whole, but that's why it's 12 sessions. And that's kind of what we're going to do today for the planet Ketu. I'll speak a little bit about Ketu, and then we're going to look at 3 horoscopes. And in my classes, and what I'm doing today, is that I try to choose horoscopes that will teach students things they wouldn't otherwise know. Everybody knows Ketu is psychic, metaphysical, spiritual, astrological. People understand what the houses are, but oftentimes they don't zone in on the particulars. Like in my classes for class 4, I used the chart of Jay Leno, who is a talk show host, who has a phenomenal 4th house, but you wouldn't know it by looking at it. You look at it, it's got one planet in the 4th house, the sun. So it's not a real obvious thing, but as I get into it, you start to see it's phenomenal, and I make it very, very clear. And he actually owns 180 houses, cars. The 4th house is cars and homes. He owns 180 cars. He owns 162 motorcycles. This is something that if you're looking at his horoscope, you go, why does he own so many cars? And and I never focused on his house. I don't know what his house is like, but I suspect it's also spectacular. So today, we're gonna be putting up some interesting charts. B.V. Raman, the most famous Indian astrologer of the 20th century that I know of, was B.V. Raman. And we have good data because he listed it in his book, Notable Horoscopes, I think it was. So we're going to go over that. So first, let me just say a few things about Ketu. First of all, in Parashara's book, all he talks about with Rahu and Ketu in terms of exaltations is, he says, Rahu is exalted in Taurus. Rahu is very good in Taurus. That's all he says. He doesn't say where Ketu is well placed. He doesn't say where Rahu's in its own sign. He doesn't say where it's in a bad sign. All he says, Rahu's exalted in Taurus. In 1982, I was in India studying with a scholar, R. Santanam, who has translated 6 or 7 classic texts, Parasara, Saravali. He translated a lot of them. He was a scholar. He trained me. I already knew Western astrology. So when I was with him, it was very quick to learn because I knew astrology already. I didn't know the Hindu system. That's where I learned it. Then I went back a year and a half later and studied with PM Padia in Bombay, who was still alive, but not seeing clients. People see these videos and they call Padia and he says, I'm 82, I'm not doing it now. So when I was with Padia, Padia was different from Santanam. Santanam was a scholar and used a lot of yogas, and he was very scholarly. And Padia was a practicing astrologer, and he was great. I always tell this story that when I went back to India, I set up a meeting with a well-known astrologer in Bombay. I was actually heading for Bangalore and the southern India, but I never got there because on the very first day I was in Bombay, I found Padia. The way I found him was I went to a tourist bungalow and I said, "Do you have a list of I actually said, "Do you have a list of ashrams?" Because I figured the ashrams, they'll know the astrologers. And they said, "Oh, I have a list of ashrams." I said, "Well, do you have a list of astrologers?" Yeah. So I got the name of Ghansham Joshi in Bombay. I called Ghansham Joshi. When I got to his flat, there were 8 or 10 astrologers in the room. So what is this? He said, "You're a Western astrologer. I called all the local astrologers to meet you." 15 minutes later, Padia says, "Let me see your chart. Let me see your chart." He looks at it and he says, "You got married at 21 or 23. I was 30 at the time. I said, "Wow, this is the guy I want to teach me." So he was very, very practical, very curious. He didn't go by just what people said. He went by what he found to work. And Padia told me there is no doubt Rahu and Ketu, both Rahu and Ketu, are best placed in Virgo. And that has been my experience for the 40 years since I saw him. 42 years by now. So Rahu and Ketu is very well placed in Virgo. Ketu, first of all, I consider Rahu and Ketu, the understanding of Rahu and Ketu, to be the third most, the third biggest superstition in astrology. The first is Sati Sati. Everybody thinks, oh, Sati Sati is so horrible. It's ridiculous. Sati Sati makes up 18 years. If you live to 80, Sati Sati is 18 years of your life. If those 18 years are so bad, plus your bad bhuktis, it's ridiculous. When it comes to the superstition of Rahu and Ketu, it's because they are the head and the tail of a Rakshasa. And I can't even tell you, I get so many clients, "Oh my God, I'm coming to Rahu, it's terrible, I'm so scared." Rahu represents insatiable cravings and desires for worldly power. Rahu in the 10th house, I have Rahu in the 10th. When I got to the Rahu Dasha, my career went just phenomenally upward. I gained fame, recognition. Rahu in the 10th was great. It depends, where Rahu is as to what it's going to be doing, but it is worldly power. Most actors that win their, not most, but many actors that win their Oscars do so in Rahu Dasha because it's worldly power. If Rahu's in the first house, it's worldly. It gives the person very, very good looks. Okay, Ketu and Rahu, when it's near another planet, does not cause intense damage. It really doesn't. When Ketu is next to another planet, it causes intense damage because Ketu is the bottom portion of the serpent, which is like a black hole. Ketu represents the astral plane, the psychic, the metaphysical. Ketu is the astral plane from which we were born. Before we were born, we were in that astral plane. Now we're in the physical plane. And if Ketu is near something, very prominent like Venus or Jupiter or Mercury, that other planet, if Mercury is next to Ketu, Mercury is not functioning in the world. It's functioning in the psychic plane, in the metaphysical plane. So the person with Ketu, Mercury Ketu, their mind is not grounded. Their mind goes back and forth and back and forth. If Venus is next to Ketu, Venus, instead of being in the worldly way, it's functioning on the psychic, metaphysical, the astral plane. People with Venus, Ketu, they're at the wrong place at the wrong time in love matters. It just, the Venus doesn't function in the world. It's like Ketu's like a black hole for planets. It gets swallowed up, and so Ketu is also, let's take Ketu on the ascendant, because that's a very basic placement that'll let you know how Ketu works. Ketu on the ascendant could be a person that it depends how close Ketu is to the ascendant. If the ascendant's 2 degrees and Ketu's 28 degrees, it's a very wide aspect. It's there, but very wide. If Ketu's within 5 or 10 degrees of that ascendant, or 2 or 3, it's going to get incredibly intense. 2 to 3 degrees, then the person is really, they're very shy, very introverted, very introspective, because their personality is, they got one foot in the psychic world while they're still trying to deal with the physical world. So it's psychic, it's metaphysical, it's astrological. This is what you're going to be looking at when you're looking at astrologers. You're going to be looking at their Ketu. It's usually strong. If you go to spiritual movements, I found this out early in my career. I went to the Fairfield, Iowa, which is the headquarters in America of the Transcendental Meditation Movement. This was in 1989 and 91. I went there, and I saw so many people that had Ketu right next to Mercury, Ketu right next to Jupiter, Ketu right next to Venus. So Ketu is very strong, and these people were pursuing psychic, metaphysical, spiritual matters. Now, those planets would be very harmed being next to Ketu, but Ketu would become very, very prominent. So psychic, metaphysical, astrological. The other thing is, when people are partly in the spiritual world, not so much in the physical world, they are more real. They don't like bragging. They do not like bragging. They do not like making a big show. They are more with the spiritual world. So people that are Ketu-like are very real. They want to be down to earth and real. People with Ketu very prominent can make themselves invisible. I have Ketu 2 degrees away from my ascendant ruler, Venus. I have Venus at 7. Well, in the Hindu, it would be different. I have Mars at 14 Leo, Ketu at 15 Leo, and Venus at 16 Leo. They're all those 3. So the person with Venus near, a person with a very, very prominent Ketu, they can make themselves invisible so that people don't see them. I remember when I was very young, maybe 4 or 5, and I heard about the concept of war. I said, I don't want to go to war. If I have to go to war, I'll hide. I'll be invisible. But that's a weird example. But in fact, a Ketu person, if they're at a party and there's someone they don't want to see, they can pull themselves back. They can pull themselves back so that nobody sees them. So they can become invisible if they like. So that's basically the nature of Ketu. So let's look at some horoscopes. Recently, I was looking at the chart of B.V. Raman. B.V. Raman. And this is so let me repeat the birth data while you're getting it. B.V. Raman is August 8th, 1912, 7:43 p.m. in Bangalore, India. Now, for the students watching this video, I don't want to leave the horoscope on the screen the entire time. I would like for the students to be able to see me talking. When I emphasize things, I want them to be able to see that. So what I suggest is we'll just leave this up for a minute, or you can pause the screen and copy the horoscope down for yourself. I do also want to mention, are the degrees here? Oh yeah, the degrees are under there. So I do want to mention something about this. I really suggest, the thing is, when I am teaching, if you take my classes or you hear what I'm going to be talking about today, you're going to see that I use the degrees of the planets and the ascendant very, very, very intensely and very purposefully. So when you have horoscope programs, I would prefer that you get the horoscope programs where they put the degrees in the chart. Now that may be only in the Western programs. I'm not sure. There is a online donation. It's free. You make donations. It's called hjyotish.com. hjyotish.com. It stands for Hayden's Jyotish. And the degrees will be there, because when you're looking at these planets and they have aspects, you want to be able to see the aspects. So when I am looking at the horoscope, I have a horoscope on my screen right now. I see Ketu at 22 Virgo, and I see the moon at 23 Taurus. But I can see it because the Ketu is in Virgo in the chart. Right next to that, it says 22 degrees. You see the moon in Taurus, it says 23 degrees. Immediately, you see the tightness of the aspect. This is extremely important. So especially, some programs, they don't even say, like, this one is better than most. It says Sun 23 Cancer, Jupiter 12 Scorpio. It says it. Many of them don't even do that. They just say the Sun 120 degrees, Jupiter 156 degrees. This is terrible. Unless you're a mathematical genius, you won't be able to see the aspects. Okay, so let's take this down so I can, so students can see me now. Okay, so as I said, I try to use horoscopes that will show you things you might otherwise not know. One of the things, first of all, let's just say right off the bat, Ketu, not Rahu, but Ketu, which is psychic, metaphysical, astrological, is in Virgo, in its best sign, in its best sign in the house of astrology and metaphysics and psychic. It's very obvious. The planet of psychic, metaphysical, astrological in the house, the 8th house, psychic, metaphysical, astrological, and it's in its best sign. By the way, there's something I forgot to mention. Ketu is film and photography. Film and photography. We'll get to that in some of the chart, in one of the charts here. So the other thing that I want to say is, if you read my books, this is the Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer, revised in 2020. This is the Braha Sutras, which was written 2 years ago, the Braha Sutras. And if you read there, one of the things that I talk about, and I say it in all my videos, is that before I do a chart, as soon as I calculate the chart, before I look at the planets in the houses, I look to see, are there any planets that are stationary? A planet that is stationary, that's not moving while all the other planets are moving, if that is stationary, that is going to be extremely, extremely powerful. So the ruler of the 8th house is Mercury. Mercury is stationary direct. Mercury had been going backwards, and then it stopped, and then it turns, I'm sorry. Mercury here is, hold on one second. I think it's actually, it's Mercury stationary. It's stationary, and then the next day it starts going backwards. It's still enormously powerful, okay? So the ruler of the 8th house is Mercury, which is the mind, and it's stationary. It's extremely powerful. And Mercury rules the 5th house, which is the mind, and it's stationary. So the mind is incredible. Mercury, the planet of intelligence, is incredible. Mercury rules the 8th house of astrology, psychic, metaphysics. I mean, it doesn't get any stronger. And then you have that Mercury at 13 degrees, almost 14 degrees, aspecting the ascendant at 10 degrees. Now, there's several planets, Venus, Mars, Mercury, aspecting the 1st house. But the tightest aspect on the ascendant is Mercury. It's a mental, intellectual lifetime. Also, he's going to look youthful all his life because of that Mercury. But the main thing is, and this is a subtlety. When Mercury throws its aspect, it is a stronger aspect than usual because it's stationary. That is the only time that I would mention that. It's people think, oh, you have Mercury in Pisces, it's going to throw a weak aspect because it's afflicted. No, that's not the case. Oh, the sun is exalted in Aries, therefore it's going to throw a very strong aspect. No, that is not the case. But if a planet is stationary, that planet's throwing a stronger aspect. So we have this phenomenal eighth house, this phenomenal ruler of the eighth house. And then we have Ketu aspecting the moon.
Mm.
Ketu is psychic and metaphysical and astrological, and it's aspecting the moon. So the foundation of a horoscope is the ascendant and ascendant ruler, and the moon and the sun. Those are the foundation. If they're all weak, life is very difficult. If they're all strong, life tends to be easy and you get through life without fears and problems and things like that. It just goes much smoother. So aside from that, whether it's an easy or difficult life, aside from that, the moon is super important, as is the ascendant and the sun. So Ketu aspecting the moon is terrible for the moon. The mother is not good with this Ketu hitting that moon. Moon is hurt by Saturn, moon is hurt by Ketu. Moon will have some benefit by being aspected by Jupiter, no doubt. But look at the degrees. Jupiter and Saturn are 10. Jupiter's 12, Saturn's 10. The moon is 23. The Ketu aspect onto that moon is within a degree. So Ketu's really affecting the moon. So that's bad for the mother, bad for the, on the emotional side, the mind or the emotions are going to be affected by this Ketu, which is great psychically and metaphysically and spiritually, but it's not really good for the emotions. It's not good for the mother. It won't help the fourth house that Ketu is aspecting that. But for what this man did with astrology, all the books he wrote and the fame he brought to astrology, this is why it's happening from that eighth house, which is enormously strong. And then he has the fame to be able to do it. How does he have the fame? He has the fame because the first house is unbelievably strong. Unbelievably strong. The ruler of the first house is Saturn. It is aspected by moon in its exaltation sign Taurus. It's aspected by Jupiter. It's also got an aspect from Ketu, but basically the moon is angular. It's aspected by these two benefics. It's a very, very strong Saturn, which is the ascendant ruler. The Venus, Mars, Mercury, they're all going to intensify the ascendant. If it was just Mars and Saturn aspecting the ascendant, Saturn aspects the ascendant, Mars aspects the ascendant. If it was just that, it wouldn't be good. Even though Saturn's aspecting its own sign, Saturn hitting the ascendant would weaken the confidence. Mars aspecting the ascendant would give mechanical, technical skills, but it wouldn't help the happiness. It would be an agitated life. If you have malefics aspecting the first house, it's agitated. It's not happy. It's not easy. But it would give abilities. It would give Saturnian abilities, responsibility, discipline, humility. Mars would give mechanical, technical skills, computers. They didn't have computers when he was alive. Well, he died in 98, so toward the end of his life, they did. But it would give him mechanical, technical, and it would give him the Saturn. But this is not that. This is Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn aspecting that ascendant. And that Venus-Mars, forget about Mercury for a second. Just having that Venus-Mars anywhere in a chart is very passionate. So it's going to give passions to the seventh house and the public, and it's also going to give passions to the first house, which is the personal fame.
Yeah. Sorry, James, continue. Sorry, my screen is just being weird, so I'm just fixing it here, but I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to say about this horoscope is the spiritual career. So the fame is coming from the first house. Now look at the fame from the 10th house. Probably the strongest planet in the chart is Mars. Probably. Could be Saturn, could be Ketu, but Mars is extremely powerful. It's angular, and the closest aspect it gets is from not Mercury, stationary Mercury. So Mars is angular, it's next to stationary Mercury and Venus. It's with two great benefics. So this Mars is enormously, enormously powerful, and it rules the career house. Then you have Jupiter in the 10th house, which is good, and the moon aspecting the 10th house, which is good. The Saturn aspecting the 10th house is not good. Doesn't help it. The Upachaya houses 3, 6, 10, and 11 can use malefics. So it's not a big deal that Saturn's aspecting the 10th when you have two benefics, Jupiter there, moon aspect. It's not a big deal. The main thing about that Saturn to understand is that it rules the 12th house, which is the house of moksha, but is also a dashtana, a grief-producing house. So by having a grief-producing house, the 12th ruler, connected to the 10th house, there will be some problems with the career, which means changes of career, confusion of career, numerous careers. Now, this chart is so strongly indicating a spiritual metaphysical career, it's not a big deal. But here's the thing. The 12th house is a bad house, but it is also the house of moksha, the house of enlightenment. So if a person has the 12th house connected to the 10th, they will have some confusion, some problems, some changes of career. But if they do a consciousness raising career, a moksha career, it goes very well. That means astrology, yoga, meditation. Astrology, yoga, meditation, anything spiritual will be good. Now, we didn't show the Dasamsha, but I'll just tell you right now that in this Dasamsha chart of B.V. Raman, he has Taurus ascendant. The 10th ruler is Saturn. It's in the 12th house. It is fallen. It is fallen in the 10th, in the 12th, but it's still in the 12th. So now he's got two connections to the 12th house and the 10th. That means that there would have been confusion. Most likely there would have been more significant confusion in the early years of what he would want to do as a career. And there could have been more changes of career because it's now showing up twice. The other thing about this, so it's a very, very strong 10th house, but it's got very strong psychic, spiritual leanings, etc. The other thing about this is that Jupiter and Saturn are opposite each other. That is a very specific feature. And oh, by the way, I forgot to say, sorry, the career house.
Yeah, I'm here. I just don't know what I'm having some technical issues with my video today. Yeah, okay, no, but I can hear you. Yeah, I'm just fixing
Is it going to cut out what I said?
No, it won't. No. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I forgot to say that the 10th house is also super strong because Mars aspects its own sign, Scorpio. It's a super strong ascendant. It's a super strong 10th house. They're both enormously strong. And then you got this phenomenal 8th house. Now you have Jupiter, Saturn, opposite. Now this Jupiter is definitely afflicted. He would have problems with gurus and spiritual teachers, no doubt about it. There would be some problems with gurus, spiritual teachers. He may have had liver, gallbladder, spleen problems. Why? Because Jupiter is aspected by Saturn and Mars. Even though Mars is aspecting its own sign, Scorpio, it's not helping Jupiter. So Jupiter's got some problems. Now, the other thing about this, super strong first house, super strong 10th house, but it needs to be a spiritual career, I think. I mean, that would work best. The other possibility would be handling other people's money. The 8th house is other people's money, but this is more of a spiritual chart, no doubt. Ketu aspecting that moon that tightly is going to make it very spiritual. Jupiter, Saturn, conjunction or opposition are people that break boundaries. Not everybody that has Jupiter conjunct Saturn or Jupiter opposite Saturn will break boundaries. But the people that do break boundaries, they have Jupiter conjunct Saturn or Jupiter opposite Saturn. Why? Because, and I have Jupiter opposite Saturn within minutes, not degrees, but minutes. Because when you have Jupiter opposite Saturn or conjunct Saturn, and you're growing up, every time you have a dream or a vision, the brain comes in. Jupiter's dreams and visions. Every time you have a dream and vision, oh, I want to be a great this, I want to be a great actor, I want to be a great scientist, I want to be, right away, Saturn comes in and says, hold on, Johnson, hold on. Is that realistic? Is that likely? Can you really do that? I know this because I have Jupiter opposite Saturn within minutes. By the time you get to 25 or 30, every time you have a dream or a vision, immediately, you know, like that, if it's possible, if it's realistic, you know it very quickly. When I published Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer, there were no Western books out there. There was one written in the 60s, but it was pretty useless. It didn't help anything. It was good for the calculations, but not for the interpretations. I wrote that book, and I intended to self-publish it because I wanted a big, you could see, this is not the original, but the original was just as big. It's huge. I wanted a big book to stand out, to make a splash. So I wasn't going to send it to publishers. But then I thought, wait a minute, who knows? Maybe they'll make me rich. Maybe they'll make me a great offer. Boy, was I wrong. I sent it to 3 publishers. They all said no. And then I got scared. I said, I know it's a good book. I said, what's the story? They said, well, it's a great book. We wouldn't even have to edit it. It's so well written. They said, but we can't sell Hindu astrology books. We tried. They don't sell. I said, yeah, because you haven't had a good one written by a Westerner. But that is I knew that it would sell. There was no doubt because of the Jupiter Saturn, it gives you the sense of what is practical and not. So this is a man, Raman, who broke the boundaries with astrology. He really made it big in India for astrology. Okay, so that's all I want to, unless you have any questions, that's all I have to say about this chart.
I just had a question. I didn't, when you say his Saturn went into the 12th house in D10, you said, right? D10
Yep.
or D, and you said it's fallen. What does it exactly mean, fallen?
Fallen is very bad.
Okay.
So Nietzsche, you know,
Okay.
Nietzsche?
Yeah, Nietzsche. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
It's fallen. And that's bad. So here's the thing. That fallen, that ruler of the 10th house in the Dasamsha, fallen, is serious. I guarantee you, I don't know his life, but I can guarantee you that somewhere along the way before, he would not know who he was until the age of 35, 36. Saturn comes of age in the 36th year. That's when it matures. He would be experimenting up till 35, 36. Between 35 and 36, that's when he would come to know who he is and what he's capable of. There would definitely have been, he may have had some career he wanted to do and wasn't able to do it. Something would stop it, or confusion. There would definitely, if it was just from the natal chart, it would be very slight, because the career is so strong and the first house is so strong. It would be a slight changeableness or something slight. But now that you've got it in the Dasamsha, and in the Dasamsha it is fallen, Nietzsche, it would be serious. But still, because the 10th house is so strong, because the ascendant is so strong, and because the destiny with metaphysics is so strong, that Saturn's not, it's going to give some damage. As I said, there would definitely be something in his background that would have been a problem in the first 30 years. But it wouldn't take over so much, as particularly, the thing is, if I was doing this chart when this was a boy, I would say, listen, because of that fallen Saturn in the 12th house in the Dasamsha, you have got to choose a spiritual metaphysical career: yoga, meditation, astrology, psychic. That'll work best. If you don't do that, like, I could see this man doing business because of the 7th house being strong. I could see this man building homes, land, real estate, Saturn in the fourth house aspected by Jupiter, Moon. He could, but there would be intermittent problems all the time because of the fallen Saturn in the Dasamsha.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Let's go to the chart of Lyndon Johnson. I'm not going to talk long about Lyndon Johnson, because he's not a spiritual metaphysical person at all. He was as worldly as possible. And by the way, So I am using the birth data that I was given 40 years ago when I started, which was August 27th, 1908, 4:18 a.m. in Stonewall, Texas. Now, I went back to this a couple of years ago, and they had changed the birth data. They had
Oh,
made it go an hour later. They made it go from Cancer ascendant to Leo ascendant. The Leo ascendant does not work based on his brothers and sisters. It does not work. It is definitely the original data that was given was accurate. This is very upsetting. This happened also with John Lennon. I spent in my revised ancient Hindu astrology book, I spend 5 or 10 pages. I spend 5 pages explaining why John Lennon had the morning birth time of Virgo ascendant, not the Pisces. I spend 5 pages going over Lyndon Johnson, explaining why it's definitely the Cancer ascendant, not Leo. Okay, so Ketu, what do you think when you think Ketu? You think film and photography, magic, oil and gas, magic, film and photography, psychic, metaphysical, astrological. So this is a very worldly chart. This is a president. This is a man who wanted power. And part of the power is the 5 planets in the sign of Leo. He was a power monger. And he was very, very powerful. And he passed more legislation than any president in history. And Ketu, looks strong only in the sense that it is strong. It's in the 6th house, which is not a strong placement. Ketu in the 6th basically means a person who has the ability to be healing other people, specifically through Ayurveda, herbs, homeopathy. Ketu is psychic, metaphysical, so otherworldly. So if Ketu's in the house of health, the person, if they're disposed to being a healer, they will not be a nurse or a doctor. They will be Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbs, homeopathy. That's the metaphysical planet in the house of healing. This is a strong Ketu in the sense that it is well aspected because it's aspected by 2 great benefics. Jupiter is aspecting Ketu within 5 degrees in Jupiter's own sign. Jupiter's aspecting Ketu within 5 degrees. That's enough to make Ketu strong. And now it's aspecting it in its own sign. And then you have Venus aspecting that Ketu. It's a strong Ketu, even though it's not angular, even though it's not in a trine house, 9 or 5, it's a strong Ketu. The reason I'm putting up this chart is because it's very hard for astrologers to really, in the beginning years, it's very hard to see some of the things. And one of them is, well, actually, before I tell you how prominent this Ketu is, before I tell you that, Ketu did not make him spiritual, psychic, metaphysical. Well, made him psychic, maybe. But Ketu is illusion and deception. Illusion, deception, confusion, drugs, alcohol. Illusion, deception, confusion, alcohol. So Ketu can make a person devious. Now, you have to be very careful about this. You don't want to, every client that you get where Ketu is, aspect. I mean, most of what you see, you can take the chart off the screen now. Actually,
yeah.
no, leave it. Wait, leave it up for a minute. Leave it up
Okay,
for a
okay,
minute
okay, sure,
until
yeah.
I get to what I'm about to say on what's making it prominent. So most people, if Ketu is next to a planet, or a house, or it's going to make them film and photography, psychic, metaphysical, astrological, oil and gas. Lyndon Johnson got his money from oil people. The oil people were the ones that put him in office, but he also was very deceptive. Politics has always been dirty business, but nobody cheated as much as Lyndon Johnson to get to the Congress, to get to the Senate. He cheated and cheated. And it wasn't just that he cheated, he was devious. He was as devious as could be. When he got to the Senate, his first thought is, okay, how do I get up there? How do I get to the top? So he goes to the person that has the most power, which was Sam Rayburn, was the Speaker of the House. Sam Rayburn was the Speaker. He had all the power. He went to Sam Rayburn, and he basically brown-nosed Sam Rayburn. Oh, you're so great. You're like the father I never had. Sam Rayburn took him under his wing and boosted him. But this is the deviousness of Ketu. This is Ketu. Ketu people will be thinking, how can I get this done? How can I manipulate things to get what I want? That would be Ketu being devious. Now, what's making Ketu so prominent? Why am I using this chart to show you Ketu? Ketu aspects Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Moon, Mercury. And Moon is the ascendant ruler. Ketu is aspecting Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Moon, Mercury. 5 planets aspected by Ketu. And the ascendant ruler is one of them. So it's really like 6. And then you look at the degrees. It's not that Ketu's in 2 degrees and all the other planets are in 25 degrees. No. Ketu is 9. Jupiter is 4. That's a tight aspect. Ketu is 9. Mars is 9. Mars is 9. Ketu is 9. Mars rules the 5th house, the mind. Mars rules the 10th house, the career. Now, normally that would not be a great placement for the career ruler to be that tightly aspected by Ketu, unless you're going to be in film, photography, oil, gas, magic, or the psychic fields, which he's not. But his Mars is super strong because of all the other aspects it gets. Ketu is aspecting the sun within 2 degrees. Mars is aspecting the moon within 7 degrees. Mars is aspecting Mercury within 11 degrees. Between 4 degrees and 11 degrees, Ketu is aspecting all these. This is not nothing. This is a man, in college, I'm going to say it, this guy would lie. This guy would lie all the time. He was known as a man who could not tell the truth. Could not tell the truth. If whatever he was doing, he would prefer to lie. In college, they called him Bullshit Johnson. Because he would lie, because he was deceptive, illusion, deception. If you had Ketu tightly aspecting 5 planets, what would you be doing? Oil, gas, metaphysics, film, photography, lying, confusion. This is a politician's horoscope. Because of the 5th house and because of the sun being with Mars. Anyway, I just wanted to put that up there to show you. This is something that like when I analyzed his horoscope in my book in 1985, I didn't see that. I didn't see. In fact, by that time, I don't know if I was even using the aspects of Rahu and Ketu because my teachers didn't use it. My teachers did not use the aspects of Rahu and Ketu. About 3 or 4 years into my practice, I started to notice that if a planet or a house was aspected by Rahu or Ketu, if there was a malefic aspecting a planet and a house, and Rahu or Ketu, that planet or house took a beating. I said, why is this happening? Then I realized, oh, Rahu and Ketu definitely do throw aspects. Rahu aspects can be quite good for power. They can be quite good for power. They're not, Rahu aspects and Ketu aspects are never good. If there's a bunch of malefics in a house and Rahu or Ketu pile on, it's no good. But if there's a planet or a house that's well disposed and Rahu aspects it, the Rahu will throw power, the Ketu will throw something good with film and photography if they're well disposed. If they're poorly disposed, Rahu and Ketu will join in and spoil it. Okay, so let's go to the. Oh wait, hold on 1 second. Yeah, so I do want to say this just for people that are interested. the way that you know that the cancer is, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons that I specify in my analysis in my ancient Hindu book. But if you simply take the brothers and sisters, he had 3 or 4 brothers and sisters. So if you look at this, and he was the oldest. So we're talking about the third house, the younger. So if you look at this, the ruler of the third house is Mercury. Mercury, the closest aspect it gets is to the moon. The moon and Mercury are both dual. The moon is waxing and waning. Mercury is dualistic. So Mercury, being next to the moon, which is numerous, is going to give numerous siblings. And Mercury is not just next to the moon, it's next to moon, sun, Mars, Jupiter. So he had 3 or 4 siblings. If you move it to Leo, the ruler of the third house becomes Libra. And Libra is ruled by Venus, which is not aspected by anything except it's in the same house with Rahu. You get a Rahu aspect to the third house. You get the third house ruler next to Rahu. These are not planets that are very abundant. You know, that if he had a Leo ascendant, he'd be lucky to have one sibling that would be very Rahu-like. The third ruler Venus with Rahu, and Rahu aspecting the third, he'd have one sibling that was domineering and pushing. More than one would be very, very unlikely. But in this case, the third ruler, Mercury, is with 2 degrees from the moon and with 4 other planets. That's just a simple explanation. Okay, so let's move to your chart. Let's move to your chart, which I chose your chart. Why did I choose your chart? Because you have a prominent Ketu, and we're talking about Ketu.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So now remember, Ketu is film and photography, and you're doing YouTubes. You know, I had a Brigu reading that was done in 1996. It was very accurate. It said I would be an astrologer. It said I would write several books. It gave the details of my first marriage and divorce. It talked about my son. It was very, very accurate. But one thing was ridiculous. It said I would use astrology in films. I thought, wow. And I got this done in 1996, and I'm thinking, how can I use astrology in films?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. Actually, I never realized it because I really thought they meant films because I was an actor once. So I thought they really meant films. And then this year, I took my Brigu reading that was written in Hindi to have somebody look at it because everybody gives a different interpretation. And they said, oh, yeah, they said you'd be doing YouTubes. I said, what? They said, yeah, films, YouTubes. So
okay, yeah.
So your Ketu is very prominent, and that's the fact that you're doing YouTubes. So the Ketu here is very prominent because Ketu is 6 degrees away from the ascendant. So you're going to be a Ketu type of person, psychic, metaphysical, introspective, shy, astrological. You might want to work with film or photography. And that's 6 degrees away from the ascendant. You can make yourself invisible when you want to. You will want to be real. You won't want to be bragging and showing off, etc. Ketu becomes much stronger. It's already strong being 6 degrees away from the ascendant. And if Jupiter was not there, it would be very difficult for you to be in YouTubes because you would be too shy and introspective. But because Jupiter is strength, this is not, you don't have Ketu on the ascendant. You have Ketu conjunct Jupiter on the ascendant. It's completely different. You have Ketu conjunct Jupiter on the ascendant. That Ketu is now becoming super strong, making Ketu and Mars are the strongest planets in the chart, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Ketu is super strong because it's on the ascendant, but more so because it is with Jupiter. And so the psychic, the metaphysical, but it's also going to be psychic, metaphysical, but you're going to have enough confidence because Mars, the ascendant ruler, Mars is strong in the 10th with Venus. Mars aspects the ascendant and the Jupiter there. So that's going to be really, really great for Ketu being the positive aspects of Ketu. Now, Ketu's 6 degrees away from the ascendant. You've still got 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in the astral plane. You do.
Yeah.
But you will not have the same problem other people do that don't have Jupiter there. They really will have a very hard time with confidence. You will have confidence issues, but it's not from Ketu. It's from Moon and Saturn. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get to.
I feel I've struggled with that growing up a
There's
lot.
no doubt.
I feel I got more confident as I've, from one step in the world and one step in another world, and just being
The
shy, introvert, and
the
just,
problem, the
yeah,
problem, the problem is not the Ketu. It's the
yeah.
Moon. It's the Moon Saturn. I'll get to that.
Okay.
The Ketu on the ascendant would be devastating to confidence if Jupiter was not there. You don't have Ketu on the ascendant. You have Ketu Jupiter on the ascendant. There's a difference.
Yeah.
The moon is the childhood. The moon is the nurturing in childhood. And when the moon is afflicted, the moon is in the 12th house, bad house. The moon is with Saturn. That's enough to really harm this moon, which is not a bright moon either. The moon is the trouble. And when the moon is difficult, the childhood is difficult. And then the feeling, if you have a sense of poverty, I don't mean financial poverty. I mean, if you have a sense of poverty, emotional poverty in childhood, it's going to carry over in life. Then you feel like, I don't deserve money. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve that. That's the moon. That's not Ketu. Ketu is shy, introspective. The moon is a sense of emotional deserving. That's the problem. Now, the Jupiter in the first house is tremendous. Technically speaking, one out of every 12 horoscopes that we get should have Jupiter in the 12th house, but it's never like that. I don't see a lot of people with Jupiter in the first house. If you have Jupiter in the first house, you've done something really, really, really good in past lives. Because if Jupiter's in the 10th house, luck with career. Jupiter's in the 5th house, luck with love affairs and children and investments. But if you have Jupiter in the first, the whole life has a certain amount of luck because of sattva, purity in past lives. There must have been a lot of purity in past lives, but the luck is coming more on the psychic spiritual side rather than the personal side. That's where the luck is. Now, this chart has a Venus-Mars conjunction in an angle. You can take this off the screen now.
Yeah.
The Venus-Mars conjunction is a very passionate lifetime. It means love at first sight. It means getting into love relationships poorly because the attraction is so strong, but they're not necessarily good for you, but the attraction is so strong. That's the Venus-Mars, very passionate. The chemistry is very strong. So it's not great with love matters, but it makes the life passionate. The whole life is passionate, not just passion in love matters. But when Venus-Mars is in an angle, you have a leader. Mahatma Gandhi, Venus-Mars in the first. Bill Clinton, Venus-Mars in the first. I have it in the fourth. There's a tendency to want to be leader. So, I mean, I'm much more Ketu-like, but within the field of astrology, I will come forth and lead a little bit. But Venus-Mars in an angle is very powerful. In an angle, 1, 4, 7, 10, that makes a leader. The career is very, very strong from this Venus-Mars, but the career must be psychic, metaphysical, spiritual, because the 12th house ruler Venus is in the 10th. The 12th house ruler Venus is in the 10th. Now, there's a very interesting thing here about this horoscope. It's also artistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's also artistic. You could be an artist. Mainly, it's because of the Dasamsha. In the Dasamsha chart, you have Venus in its own sign, Libra, in the career house. So Venus is coming into play. Venus is also mathematics, mathematics. But there is an artistic side here. But that Venus, Mars in the 10th house is going to get, the 10th house is a upachaya. Planets get stronger as time goes by. So your career is going to get stronger and stronger as time goes by. The leadership's going to get stronger and stronger as time goes by. And this first house is strong, even though Ketu's on the ascendant, which is usually not great. Jupiter is there, and Mars is aspecting its own sign, Scorpio. Your life's going to get stronger and stronger as time goes by.
And
And
I feel this to be the true from my younger age to teenage, and as I'm growing, the
yeah,
more confidence and stronger and more clarity, I'd say.
but it's going to get much stronger than you know. Because of that Venus Mars, it's going to get much stronger than you know. So the film and photography, because basically you're going to get the positive elements of Ketu more than the negative, not the illusion, deception, confusion, but or drugs, alcohol. So if you see Ketu in the 7th, you better start thinking the partner might be drugs, alcohol, illusion, deception, all that stuff. But you won't get that because Ketu's with Jupiter. Jupiter is in deep trouble. Jupiter's the most afflicted planet in the chart. It is, first of all, planets rarely do well in Scorpio, very rarely. Scorpio is like the 8th house. It's a natural, it's just nobody taught me that. As the years went by, I said, why don't the planets do well in Scorpio? They rarely do. Jupiter is with Ketu. It's not real strong, but it's 11 degrees. It's strong enough. And then it's aspected by Mars. Tightly. Now, Mars aspecting the ascendant is going to give some mechanical, technical, computer skills. Mars in the 10th, computer, technical in the career. But this Jupiter's got problems. And it's harming the 2nd house, which is money, could have harmed family life. It will not harm the 5th house because Jupiter's aspecting its own sign, the 5th house. This is really important. A lot of times you'll see an afflicted planet, but it throws an aspect onto its own sign. So the house it's ruling, it'll throw an aspect onto the house it's ruling, which will be its own sign, and that'll be good. So your 5th house is fine, but the 2nd house takes a beating from that Jupiter. I would strengthen Jupiter with yagyas. I would keep pictures of Krishna around, statues of Krishna. I'd wear yellow sapphire. That's what I would do. The Kalasarpa Yoga is here. So Kalasarpa Yoga is that's the 2nd biggest superstition. The first is Sati Sati. The 2nd is that Rahu and Ketu are terrible. And the 3rd is the Kalasarpa. So Kalasarpa, Kala means time, Sarpa means snake. So you killed a pregnant snake in a past lifetime. I don't take that literally. I take it symbolically. A snake is coiled up energy. You destroyed energy one way or another. Maybe you committed suicide. Maybe you had talent and didn't use it. Maybe you spoiled someone else's energy. We should not get specific about what the person did in a past life. We don't know. We're not God. But you did something. You did something. So, so the effect of this, it's a negative yoga. And I tell everybody every client that has it, do not go on the internet and read about it because astrology is possibly the worst. When I was 30, if I could have looked into the future and seen what was going on the internet with astrology, I'd have run away. So what is this? People can take 2 classes and claim they're astrologers.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I tell people with Kalasarpa Yoga, Paul McCartney, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi, Johnny Carson. How bad are these people's lives? Paul McCartney, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi. How bad are they? So But there are effects of Kalasarpa, and it can be bad. But you don't want to read that crap on the people spouting nonsense. So the Kalasarpa means the lifetime can go way up to the top and way down to the bottom. You go way up to the top, way down to the bottom. So I like to tell the story. It's just symbolic, but I like to tell the Paul McCartney story. In the 1970s, he is probably more recognizable than the presidents. The Beatles were on top of the world, and yet he gets thrown into a Japanese jail for 9 days for marijuana. Now, for the first 2 or 3 days, you'd be thinking, come on, they're not going to keep me in jail. I'm too famous for that. England will come to my defense. But 9 days, after 6, 7, 8 days, you'd be scared. So that's just an example. I'm just saying you can go way up to the top, way down to the bottom. That's one thing. The next thing is that the lifetime is more karmic or fated. This is a statement I could say to every single client I've ever had. Your life is very karmic and fated. Who's going to say no? It feels fated. But in fact, the people with Kalasarpa yoga, their lives are more karmic. And in this case, I tell the story of my brother who had Kalasarpa yoga with Rahu in the second house. Usually, not always, but usually 70% of the time, the difficulties of Kalasarpa will occur in the houses that they occupy. So my brother's Rahu, it was in a good sign in Taurus. That's the best sign according to Parashara. His was in the second house in Taurus. The second house is the face. The first house is the head. The second house is the face. He was an actor. And at the age of 35, half his face got paralyzed from Bell's palsy, and he could no longer be an actor. How karmic and fated is that? Now, that's an extreme story, and I don't tell that to people because they're going to expect, oh my God, is that? No, most people don't have that. But they do have karmic effects sometimes. And so in your case, if there was karmic effects from Kalasarpa yoga, it would be from the seventh house and the first house. And it is possible that maybe the confidence was harmed a little bit by the Ketu because it's in the first house and you got the Kalasarpa there. But I would still, you're going to find out. You're going to find out whether that's true or not. Because in a year or two, in 2026, January, February, you're going to come to Ketu Dasha. So the Ketu Dasha is going to be karmic and fated, most likely, not 100%, 70%. Wherever Rahu Ketu is, that's the areas where the fate or the karma will be most pronounced. You want my guess? My guess is that it'll be a good Ketu Dasha because Ketu's with Jupiter, and it will be fateful, but it'll be fateful on the good side. You think of Paul McCartney, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi, Johnny Carson, all these famous people. So it may be karmic. There may be fame and recognition in that Ketu Dasha. It also may be that your psychic, metaphysical, astrological abilities start to get really, really strong. When I was in my 40s, like 30s, or probably 40s, yeah, 40s, I used to get letters from famous Indian astrologers. I can't even remember them anymore. I have them in a scrapbook, but I would get letters from famous astrologers because my book sold in India. And it was very sweet, and I was very, very flattered. But I remember one of them told me, when you get to Jupiter Dasha, you will not even need the horoscope. You'll be so. Now, if I was Indian, that would probably be true, but I'm not Indian, and the psychic energy is not like that for me. I do have psychic energies, but I don't, as an astrologer, you can see the way I do astrology. It's very, very pointed and very focused on the planets, the signs, the degrees. I don't go by just psychic. If I'm doing a horoscope and suddenly it comes to me that this person's going to be a doctor, I look to see whether I can find that in the chart. I will not just say it otherwise. But the Kalasarpa yoga most of the time it's going to be in those houses. So that never happened for me, that suddenly I didn't have to use the chart, I'd be so psychic. What did happen was when I got to my Saturn Dasha, which is about 10 years ago. I think it's about 10 years ago. When I got to the Saturn Dasha, my Saturn is my strongest planet by far, by leaps and bounds, and it's aspected to the degree by Jupiter in the 5th house. Suddenly, the horoscopes started to come alive. They would, as I'm reading the chart, when I do a horoscope reading, I study the chart and I get about 50% of the information. I won't feel comfortable until I can get the theme of the chart. I want to find the theme of the chart, which I'll be teaching when I teach my classes. It's a 12-session course, but that's going to be learning how to do astrology, how to analyze properly. The second 12 sessions, those will be more about finding the theme of the chart and things like that. But when I'm doing a chart, I won't do the chart until I can make sure that I can see the theme of the chart. But as far as getting all the particulars, I get about 50%, and then the chart just starts to come alive in this. That's more about the Saturn Dasha, like that. In your case, when you're in the Ketu Dasha, you may find that your astrological ability and your psychic ability takes a huge jump, a huge leap. Your career would have to be communications, writings, teachings, because your 10th house ruler is next to exalted Mercury. Your 10th house ruler is next to exalted Mercury. So you are going to have to be communicating, writing, teaching, etc. And you may be doing it in groups. And also notice that the ruler of your 8th house, which is astrology and psychic, is Mercury. It's in the 7th degree of Virgo. When you're looking at the exalted and fallen planets, you want to look and see how close are they to their highest point of exaltation or their worst point of fall. So the highest point of exaltation is the 15th degree of Mercury. Yours is in the 7th degree. Once it gets to 16 degrees, if Mercury gets to 16, it starts losing its strength as it moves past the 15th. But yours is a very, very strong Mercury in the house of friends and groups. And the career has to be connected to groups or friends, because the 10th ruler is in the 11th, and it's with the 11th ruler. The spiritual energy, the moon is everything. The ascendant, it's a career lifetime because the ascendant ruler is in the 10th. So it's a career lifetime. It's a spiritual lifetime. Jupiter's in the ascendant. Ketu's in the ascendant. The ascendant ruler Mars is with the 12th house ruler Venus. The moon is in the 12th house. How much more spiritual can the lifetime get?
Yeah.
The all-important moon is in the 12th house. Ketu is in the 1st. Jupiter's in the 1st. The 1st house ruler is with the ruler of the 12th. It's spiritual. But most spiritual people will not have a strong career because it's all about the psychic, metaphysical, introspective. But you have Venus, Mars in the 10th. So the leadership is there. The passion is there. This is a great chart for real estate. When the 4th ruler is connected to the 12th, in the old days, in the ancient, scriptures, thousands of years ago, it would mean you had to rent out part of your home to pay your bills. These days, it means you'll do well. But look, Venus, Mars aspecting the 4th is very, very, very powerful. The fact that the 4th ruler is in the 12th is good for real estate, and it's with the moon, the ruler of the 9th. So it is very good for real estate. Let's come back to Kalasarpa for a second. So we said it's big ups and downs. You can go way up to the top, way down to the bottom. It means the lifetime is fated or karmic, particularly, not always, but particularly with the houses involved. It always means there's a couple of areas over which you have very little control or no control. I could say this to every client that walks through my door. You have some areas you can't control. Yes, I can't control my weight. Yes, I can't control my diet. Yes, I can't control my wife. Yes, I can't control my husband. The person with Kalasarpa will have some areas over which there somehow is no control, usually. In your case, seventh, marriage, first, confidence. Those are the possibilities. Those are the possibilities. Um, the Saturn, I talk about this in my Braha Sutras book. Jupiter, when it's fallen, never causes the problems you think it's going to cause. It just never gets that bad, unless it's possibly in the 5th degree of Capricorn. Of course, if it's afflicted, it will. But just being exalted, it doesn't make Saturn great. Just being fallen doesn't make Jupiter terrible. Exalted Jupiter is great. Fallen Saturn is terrible. But fallen Jupiter never causes the troubles I expect it to. Exalted Saturn never gives the great benefits that I'm waiting for. A Saturn like mine, which is not exalted, but very, very well disposed, because it's the Raja Yoga Karaka in the 5th, aspected by Jupiter. Because of that, it's great. Still causes problems, but exalted Saturn is not going to be as great as you expect. Now, this is a special Saturn in the sense that it is with the ruler of the 9th house, which is a Yoga Karaka. Having Scorpio ascendant, the moon is the best planet for the Scorpio ascendant because it rules the 9th house. So that Saturn is super strong for land, homes, real estate, but it's also ruling the 3rd house, which again is the arts. So this chart is great for the arts as well as the spiritual. The moon is in the 12th, so you're going to want to be introspective, meditation, etc. Saturn's going to give the discipline for meditation, things like that. So it is pretty spiritual chart. Rahu aspects the sun very tightly. That's a wild card. We don't know exactly what it's going to do. But remember, Rahu's aspecting the sun in Virgo. The sun is already strong. It's already well aspected because it's with exalted Mercury. Rahu aspecting the sun that tightly normally would probably be the father being domineering, pushy, smothering. And that's still possible. But Rahu is aspecting the sun in Rahu's greatest sign, and the sun rules the career house. Your career is going to get bigger and bigger. You just have to make sure there's always going to be a voice in the head that says, I'm not good enough, I don't have a degree, I'm not the right one. That's always going to be there because of the moon Saturn. How successful you could be. The fact that the 10th ruler is with exalted Mercury and being aspected by the planet of worldly power in the sign that Rahu loves, that 10th and 11th house both could be phenomenally strong. It just depends upon every time. That voice is never going away. The moon Saturn voice, I'm not good enough, it's never going away. It starts out in life at a volume of 8 or 9. Saturn's not 2 degrees away from the moon. It's 17 degrees or whatever. So it's not that tight, but it's tight enough. So maybe when you were a little kid, it was at a volume of 7. Every time that voice comes in, I'm not good enough. I don't have a degree. I shouldn't do it. Who am I to be famous? Every time that comes in, you can't resist. You don't resist it, or it gets worse. You don't expect it to go away. It's never going to go away. You live with it. You accept it. Okay. But you don't have to honor the voice. You can hear it and say, yeah, I know that tape recording. I know, I've heard that all my life. It's a tape recording. I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. The more you do that, the voice never goes away. It goes from 7 to 6 to 5. It never goes to 0, but it goes lower. So this is a phenomenal chart, in my opinion, for a spectacular leadership career with groups and friends, and spiritual career, Ketu, film, photography, metaphysics, etc. And I would, at some point in your life, the arts, sometimes people have to wait until they get older. It's a terrible way to make a very hard way to make a living. but you get older and then you say, like after 20 years of a career, no matter what it is, you usually get tired of it. And the one that you would turn to would be the arts, mainly because of the dasamsha, as well as the natal, but it's not as obvious. But Venus Mars is very creative and artistic.
Yeah.
But a planet in its own sign in a divisional chart. And let me say, I don't do divisional charts the way most do. I did when I started. I would look at your dasamsha, the whole chart. That did not work. I was being wrong all the time. I hate being wrong. I'd rather say I don't know. I don't want to be wrong. That's why the first sutra in my book, the Braha Sutras, is only use a technique if it works 7 out of 10 times. If it doesn't, ignore it, disregard it. What is the point? You want to be accurate. You're never going to be 100%, but if you can be accurate 70% of the time. So I put that number 1. Later on, I realized that number 8 was really the most important one. And that is the thought process is what matters. You not, oh, Braha said this, oh, Raman said that. That's not how you do it. You hear what the teachers say, and then you analyze it and you figure things out for yourself. You have to be able to do that. And you have to be able to look where other people are not looking. That's how I found that Ketu aspected 5 planets in Lyndon Johnson's chart. And he cheated and he lied and he couldn't tell the truth, but he was scheming and devious, because you have to be looking where others are not looking. When scientists discover something, there's 1,000 scientists looking for the cure. One person finds it because they're looking somewhere the other people are not. And you have to look, you have to assume the problem is you, not the chart. You have to, like, I'm looking at Kamala Harris's chart, and she's got the 10th house ruler in the 12th house. It's 0 degrees. There's no strength. And there's nothing obviously aspecting the 4th house. There's nothing big obviously aspecting the 10th house. And I'm saying, what is going on here? How'd she get to the vice presidency? And I'm looking, and I know the problem is me because it's got to be there. And then I realize the Bhava chart. She has a 1 degree ascendant, and she's got Venus in like 27 degrees of the 3rd house, meaning it falls in the 3rd and the 4th. When it falls in the 4th, Venus starts to aspect the 10th house, exalted. It's aspecting its exaltation sign, Pisces, the 10th house. And Mars, which is in the 2nd house, aspecting the 8th and the 9th, is in 26 degrees. It moves up to the 3rd house, and now you got Venus and Mars aspecting the 10th. The only way you can find these things that you don't see is to assume it's you, not the chart. But it's got to be your thought process that does that. But here's the other thing about only using techniques that work. So in those divisional charts, I only use the 7th house. I don't use all the other houses. I use the planet in the 7th. If it's Venus, it's a romantic partner, love partner, artist partner, and the houses Venus rules. I look at the 7th house ruler. If it's Jupiter and Jupiter's in the 5th house, then the person is maybe an artist, or they may be in investments, whatever it is, and it's a positive thing. If the ruler of the 7th is in the 12th, it's going to be bad for marriage, but the partner could be spiritual. But I only use the 10th house for the career and the 7th house, and no aspects. So the other thing about using only what works 7 out of 10 times is this. You start to be accurate 7 out of 10 times, because when you don't know something, you say it's a wild card. I don't know what this is. I don't have any wild cards in your chart. Everything here is clear to me. But I get charts with lots of wild cards. I say, I can't tell what that thing is doing. It's a wild card. I don't know. But I get enough other stuff that they're fine. When you do that, you never know when you're going to go wrong with something. Astrology is never 100%. If you're doing it well, most of what you say is going to be accurate, but once in a while, something's going to be completely wrong. And when that happens and they say, no, that's not true, as long as you have been accurate with the rest of the chart, you go, well, you beat the odds. Because in 7 out of 10 times, that what I said would have been the case. So what happens is you no longer care. It's meaningless to me if I say something that doesn't fit, unless it is absolutely huge and dominant. I don't care, because everything else is being accurate, because there's always something in astrology that's not going to work like you think.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, James. And thank you for including my chart. I really feel
I
honored
want
and
to
I appreciate
I
it.
want to I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
Your Jupiter is afflicted, and your ninth house is afflicted. The ninth house is afflicted because Saturn aspects the ninth. Jupiter aspects the ninth, but so does Saturn. The ninth ruler is in the 12th with Saturn, and Ketu is afflicted. Jupiter is afflicted, and the ninth house is afflicted. So you may have troubles with gurus and spiritual teachers. So when you go to gurus and spiritual teachers, just keep a distance. Don't completely be surrendered.
Okay.
Your sun dasha is going to be tremendous. Venus will be good. Venus will be great, but the sun will be when you make your biggest money, large sums of money.
Sun or Ketu you meant?
Sun.
Sun.
After you're going to have Ketu, then you're going to have Venus, then you're going to have the sun. The sun is huge, is a lot of money. Somehow it's later and very late, but the sun is extraordinary. Venus is going to be a great career period for you, and the arts will come into play there as well.
Nice. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you
Okay.
so much for such wonderful insights. And did you want to just share a little bit more about your courses? When do they start? And if the audience are or they want to have interest on,
So
where do they?
here's what. First of all, I will be doing some videos to let people know. So that's what this is for. And
Okay.
so after October, they can email me directly, jamesbraha@gmail.com, or my website. They'll find my email on jamesbraha.com. And then they can contact me and say I'm interested. They could also send me a friend request for Facebook, and it'll be posted on Facebook. Or if they see this in a week or two and they want to shoot me an email, I'll make sure that when the course is, it should be October, first week of October, it should be out. It's 12 classes, and I will probably package it as you can buy 6 classes or you can buy the whole 12, like that, something like that.
Okay. It'll be weekly. It'll be recorded or it'll be live weekly courses.
They are not live. It's me.
Okay.
What I just did right here is
Okay.
pretty much what I do. I have my friend Andrew, who does the computer and the editing. He's sitting there with me for a little bit, and I go over 3 horoscopes, and I go over the details, and I try to show things that that the students wouldn't otherwise know. And
Okay.
which I tried to do in this. How many people are going to know that BV Raman's Mercury is stationary and it rules the 8th house? How many people are going to know that Ketu aspects 5 planets? I'm trying to see stuff that people don't otherwise know. And it's not a lot of philosophical stuff. It's not a lot of, there's not hardly any scriptural stuff. It's just what works. That's all my astrology teacher Padilla wanted. He wanted to be accurate. That's why I loved what he did. He was brilliant at that. And that's what I try to do. And these classes, I have to tell you, I start putting up charts and I go, oh my God, I never knew this. I never saw that. The Saturn Dasha is allowing me to see things that I just never would have seen.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Yeah, thank you. So